Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome to Daily Code Challenge. I'm so excited to be here and also excited having you around. So today we have another very interesting code challenge to work with, and it's called most vowels. So it says write a function most vowels that takes in a sentence string and returns the word of the sentence that contains the most vowel. All right. Okay, so concerning this challenge, there are some basic things we need to understand. So for instance, we can see that the argument here is a string, right? So firstly, we need to convert the string into an array, right? So as to deal with individual words, right? So that's one of the first things we need to work with. So we can just write it. One, convert string to array, right? Okay. So the next thing we need to do is after when we've converted when we've converted the string to array, we need to check for the words that contain a vowel, right? Because when you look at this string very well, you can see that every word in this string contains a vowel. What if we have a string that some of the words don't contain a vowel? That could actually make the code not to run properly. So we need to consider that edge case that some words might not contain a vowel, right? So what we need to do is that we need to extract every word in the string that contains a vowel to a new array, right? So let's put that also here. So let's call it filter words with vowel. Let's just call it that. So the next thing we need to do is after when we filter the words that contain vowel, we need to find the number of vowels in each of the words, right? Let's write it. Let's say number of vowels in each word. So this is looking a bit long, but trust me, when we begin with the code implementation, it's going to look very, very easy. So the next thing we need to consider also is after finding the number of vowels in each word, we need to find the maximum number of every word, right? So inside the array, we'll be having words like, let's say, 2, 3, 7, 4, 1, right? So we have to find the maximum number of all of them here, and in this case it is 7, right? So when we can find the maximum number, we are going to know the word that has that number of vowels in itself, right? So that is going to help us to determine the word with the most vowel. So let me take this out. So let me just write maximum length of vowel in words, right? Okay, so I think with this we can begin to write our code implementation. Okay, so what do I want to say? So let's just assume we have a word like WQ here, right? So I am just trying to put this one so that when we begin to filter every word that contains a vowel, WQ is not going to be part of them, right? So that is just to show that our code is working properly, right? Okay, so I am simply going to comment this. So here are what we need to work with first. Then after when we've worked with all of this, then we finally work with this function called most vowels, right? Okay, now let's begin with the first implementation. We need to write a function to check that each of these words contain a vowel, right? Okay, so we use function. Okay, so before I proceed, I have a video that really talks about functions that tell if a word contains a vowel. So when you go to my playlist, I will just recommend and to encourage you that when you go to my playlist, search for day 20. Day 20 contains this function. So when you watch this video, you'll be able to implement such function, right? That helps to determine if a word contains a vowel. But we are still going to repeat the implementation here. So here we have, so here we are simply going to write a function to do that. So let's change this name to contains, let's call it contains vowel, right? And then let's change this params to string. So the first thing we need to do is we need to look through, because we need to look through the word to be sure that a vowel at least is found. So we use a for loop. We say for, then I change my index to I and change array.length to string, and as well remove this line of code. It's not needed. So that's what we want to do. Okay, so here is going to be string.length. So that's what we need to do is we need to write a condition using the if statement to be sure if a word contains a vowel, right? So before we write the condition statement, we need to define a variable using the const keyword and call it vowel, and then give it a value of the vowels we know, that's A, E, I, O, U. So these are the vowels we'll be working with. So we come here and say if vowel dot con includes, sorry, includes what? String I, right? Say return true. Then every other thing outside this for loop should return a false. So this is simply how we write a function to check if a word contains a vowel or not. So the next thing we also need to do is, since we've done, that's the second step we actually took, we are still going to go back to this first step, which we are going to write inside the most vowels, right? So next we want to do is we want to find the number of vowels in each word, right? So let's implement that. So let's call that function. What name should we call it? Let's call it vowel length. Vowel length, right? So let's call this one also string. Okay, so before we proceed, again, I have another video that we've worked with that can help us to determine the number of vowels found in a string, right? So when you go to my playlist, just go to daily code challenge and then search for day 21, right? It's called count vowels, right? So this is the implementation to help us determine the number of vowels we have in a string. So you can see here we have boot camp. Here we have O, and A. It gives us 3. For Apple, we have A and E. It gives us 2. And that goes on like that. So let's implement this in our code. So here we call it vowel length, right? So once again, we need to declare a variable called vowel and set it to A, E, I, O, U string. The next thing we do is we write a for loop to loop through the whole string, right? We change this array to string and we remove this line of code. All right, here the next thing we want to do is we want to write an if statement, right? We want to be sure, we want to write a conditional statement using an if statement to be sure if there is a vowel or there is at least a vowel in that word, right? So we say if what vowel dot includes string I. String I, it represents each of the character in the word, right? Because the entire word is a string which is called str, and string I is the iteration of each of the values we have in that word, right? So what this is going to do now is that we need to count the number of times a vowel appears, right? So we need to write a variable called count and set it to 0, so that here we simply just say count plus plus. Then since we have count here, the this count is representing the number of vowels we have. So we simply come here and say return count. So we save this. So this is going to help us to determine the number of vowels we have in a string. Okay, so that's the third implementation. And then the fourth implementation we need to work before we begin the most vowels function itself is the maximum length of vowels in each word, right? So if we have, for instance, after when we've done everything, then we push each of the vowel length to an array. For this hello here, we are going to be having 2. For JavaScript, we'll be having 3. For hello here, we'll be having 2 as well. For everyone here, we'll be having 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll be having 4 here, and then that's that. So we are going to be having 2, 3, 2, and 4. So we need to find the maximum of this array, and definitely that is going to give us 3. And which of the word occupies, okay, sorry, it is going to give us 4, right? And then which of the word has the 4 vowels? That's going to be everyone, right? So we get to understand that everyone should be the returned result. So let's comment on this, and then let's find the maximum length of vowels in word. So to do that, let's call it function. Let's call it is max, and then let's call this num, or let's call it array because it is going to come in as an array. Yes. So before I proceed, again, I have another video that helps us to find the maximum of an array of numbers. Sorry, it helps us to find the minimum of array of numbers. So if you understand how to find the minimum of arrays of numbers, we can also find the maximum number in an array. So when you go to my playlist, you go to day 34. This gives us minimum number, right? So this is how we implement the code to tell us the minimum number we have in an array. So when you look at this array here, 5, 2, 10, 4, 5, 3, 7, 9, 13, and minus 2, it returns minus 2, which is the smallest number in this array. Here we have 3, which is the smallest number in this array. Here we have minus 5, which is the smallest number in this array. So that's it. Okay, so here we are going to write our function here again, but I will recommend that you go back to those videos, day 20, day 21, and day 34, to get familiar with how those code implementations work, and then you can head back to this video to continue, right? So let's work this again. So how can we find the maximum number? So after we've defined the function, we need to iterate through the array, right? So we use the for loop again. We say for, we change the index here to I, and array dot length, yes, this is okay. Then we remove this line of code because we don't need it. Okay, yeah, so what we need to do first is we need to set a variable to the first item in the array using the let. We say let max, so we call this max array the first item, right? So after we've run our loop, we need to write a conditional statement using the if statement to check if maximum is less than any of the numbers in the array. So we say max less than array I. If max is less than any of the numbers in the array, that's iteratively, right? We set max to become that number, right? So After when we've done this, we simply return marks. Okay, so I think we've been able to solve these three helper functions. They're actually called helper functions because we are going to be needing them in our function to be solved, right? Now, heading to the real function now. Now, don't forget, this is my coding implementation again. There are so many ways this can be solved, right? But the one that comes easy for me is writing helper functions which can be consumed or absorbed in the final function. All right, so a function to calculate the most vowel, how do we solve that? How do we solve that? So the first thing we need to do is to declare the function. We say function, and then let's call this most vowels. So here we change params to string and we begin. The next thing we need to do is we need to write a for loop. We say for because we need to iterate through this whole string. Then we change the index to I, which is my favorite, and I change array here to string, right? And again, we don't need this line of code, so I remove that. Now, the next thing we need to do is that we understand that this string here is coming as a string. So we need to change this string to an array, right? So we simply come here and say const, let's call it const, let's call it sentence, right? So let's call it sentence, or we can just call it sentence array is equal to str dot split. So we want to split on the white space, right? That's on the empty space, right? So this is how to convert a string into an array. Okay, after doing this, the next thing we need to do is we need to, okay, so I think here we need to write a conditional statement, right? Now, what's the conditional statement going to do? The conditional statement, it is going to, but before then, sorry, before then, since we've converted this string into an array, we no longer put string here. We are simply going to put sentence array here. Okay, so here we have sentence array. So if I console log sentence array now, we are going to see that it's no longer going to be in string but in array. So let's do console.log sentence array. Let's save this and then let us run. You can see here we have hello JavaScript, hello everyone, WQ, right? So this has helped us to convert this into an array. Here we are having it at appearing in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because the code implementation is still in process. So it's looping in this number of times, the sentence array dot length number of times. That's why we can see it in 5 places because we have five we have 5 words in this array. But this is not how it is going to be. We are still working on it, right? So since we've confirmed now that we've converted our string into an array, the next thing we need to do is, let me just remove this first, or let me just comment on it. The next thing we need to actually do here is we need to extract every word that contains an array, sorry, every word that contains a vowel into a new array because we want to get rid of words that don't contain a vowel so that the code can be quite easy for us to work with. So we use an if statement. We say if, now if what do we work with? If what do we work with? We should recall that we wrote a function here that is called contains vowel. So we come here and say if contain vowel, that's if contain vowel sentence array should be placed inside of it. I. Okay, so let me explain this line of code. So we understand that sentence array contains each of the words in the array, right? Now we are now saying that if each of those words in this array, if it contains a vowel, we need to push that word to a new array, right? So we come here and we declare a new array. Let's call this array, let's call it vowel array. Then we set it to an empty string. So we say vowel array dot push. Now what are we trying to now push now? We are trying to push this word that contains at least one vowel. Don't forget, right? So this is how it works. Okay, so let us save this, and now let's try to console log vowel array here. Let's see if that is going to work. So let's say console log vowel array. Let's see what we have. Hope this is not going to be messy. Okay, let me clear this console again and let's run. Okay, wow. So we can see here now that we have hello JavaScript, hello everyone. The W key word here has been removed because we've been able to filter each of these words here that contains at least one vowel, right? Okay, having done that, we also want to find the length of each of these words. That's each of these words here. We want to find the length of the vowels present in them. We want to find the number of vowels present in each of these words and then push their values to a new array. So we come here to declare a new array. We say let vowel, let vowel length array equals to an empty string, right? So we simply come here and then say vowel length array dot push what now? We are not going to just push the word itself, right? But rather we are going to push the number of vowels found in each of those words. And remember, we wrote a function here called vowel length. So we simply copy this function vowel length, then we place it here, and then come to this sentence array. We copy this and put it as an argument in this vowel length function. So we have this. Let's save, and also let's console log this vowel length array to be sure that we are doing the right thing. So let's console log vowel length array. Let's run our code to see if we are on the right track. Okay, so here we can see that we have 2, 3, 2, 4 because for this hello here we have two vowels, which is this. For JavaScript we have I, that's three vowels. For hello again we have two vowels. For everyone we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Four vowels, right? So we understand here that everyone should be the answer because everyone here, it contains the maximum, right? It contains the maximum number of vowels in it. So the next thing we want to do is let's write the code that can tell that, okay, this 4 we have here belongs to everyone. All right. So the next thing we need to now do is we need to return something, right? Okay, before we return anything, let's console.log something. Now, I want us to understand how the index of works. For instance, let me just comment this entire code. Oh, okay, let me just create a new code, a, a new file. Let's call it testy.js. So now, how does index of work? Let's say we have an array of 3, 5, 2, 7 dot index of. Let's say we want to find the index of 2. Let's place 2 inside here. Then we console.log the entire code. Let's run this and see what we get as our result. Okay, here we have 2. Let's clear this. Let's run it again. Here we have 2 here, not because this is value 2, no, because it's of index 2, because here we have 0, 1, 2, right? Okay, so let's try for 7. 7 here, this should give us 3. Let's run it and see. 3, right? So that confirms that this index of here, it tells us the index of the value passed inside of it. So let's implement that in this code. So what we want to do here is this. We need to find the index of the maximum number, right? So let's console.log. Let's try something. Let's first of all comment this to out. I know this is getting very, very long, right? So let's say console log array. Now, what is the array we have? The array we are simply working with. Let me uncomment this again, and then let's run it again. Let me save this and let's run again. Okay, all right. So the array we want to work with now is this array that contains the length of vowels in each of those words, right? So here we are simply going to say the name of the array is vowel length array. So we say vowel length array dot index of. Now, index of, what is the maximum number we have here? 4, right? So when I put 4 here, let's save. This 4 here, it is going to give us 0, 1, 2, 3, index of 3. Let's run this. You can see we have index of 3 here from here, right? Okay, so here we simply just hard coded 4 here. How can we put in the variable that represents 4 should in case we are dealing with other strings? Okay, so here is what we need to do. Don't forget that 4 here is represent the maximum length of array that we have in this argument, right? In this array here. So we wrote a function initially that is called isMax. So we are simply going to say isMax, then passing a value to it. Now, what value do we want to pass inside this isMax? We want to pass in this array. So isMax is going to help us to determine the maximum number we have here, which is 4, right? So here we simply comment and then say vowel length array, right? So when I run this, we are going to get 3 as well. All right, let us run this. We still get 3 because this code itself, it represents 4. Okay, now since we have 3 here in this number, in this array here that contains every number that has vowel in them, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, and we know that everyone here, it contains the highest number of vowels in it, which is 4 numbers of vowels. That's how we actually got this, and it's occupying the index 3, right? So here is what we need to do. We are going to pass this entire value as an index to this, right? So what this means is that let's write its own console log, right? So let's remove this, and then let's console log vowel array. Now vowel array again is this entire one here, right? But now I want to find the index 3. So what we are simply going to do is to do this, and then we pass in this whole code inside this part here. So we save this and we run. So this gives us everyone. You can see that this returns everyone for us, right? Because when you do this, let me just put this here. When you copy this and then you place it here, Control V, and then you call 3 on it, it's going to give you the number, the value on index 3, which is everyone. So this is exactly what we just did here. But here we did not hard code it. Here we hard coded it, right? So that's just the difference. Now that we've been able to get everyone, we are simply going to comment all of this console log, and then instead we need to return that value. So we say return what in this case? We need to return this entire code. So we just paste it here. All right, so let's run this code again. So I am simply going to clear this console and then run this code. We have everyone, right? So this works very, very well. So let's assume we have another word there that contains more vowels. Like let's say we have E I O U A D R T E I A. Let's assume there's a word as this. So here we can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vowels here. Let's save this and see if this word is going to be returned as our value. Exactly. So this gets returned. So so with this, we've been able to write a code that helps to find the most vowel, the word with the most vowel. So I understand that this is very, very long. It's extremely long, trust me. But like I will always say, there are so many ways to solve coding challenge. I believe that when you solve yours, it's going to be much more shorter than this. But please share your code with us on the comment section. I would really love to read your code, right? Because this is very long to me, and I believe there are shorter ways to solve this out there, which I'm yet to actually discover, right? So I believe someone can do this in a more shorter form, right? So with this, I say thanks for joining on this call. Thanks for having me, and continue coding. Don't relent. And like I said, I would really love to read your code, right? When you have a shorter version of this code. All right. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel Dev with Excel, and turn on your notification, right? So thanks once again for having me here, and bye.